This is a Grease Media production.
Sup team, welcome back to another episode of Grease Media Careers. In this episode, we're talking to my good friend Guy, who works for a small investment firm based out of Washington, D.C. that specializes in the investment in sustainable energy projects. While that is what his firm does, this pod is more for anyone who is interested in going into a career in finance. Whether you are going to university and you're thinking about doing a finance degree so you can go work on Wall Street, or you are a career shifter who, for example, may be working for a consulting firm and thinking, fuck this, I want to go into finance, then this is the podcast for you. It will explain the industry, how it works, the different sort of sides of the buy side and the sell side, what sort of money can be made in each, the skill sets and the lifestyle associated with each, and then we go down into the minutia about how much you can make over the first 10 years in your career on the buy side, what sort of people are attractive to buy side firms, what you should be studying at university, or what experience you should have to kill it in your buy side interviews. So everything you need to know essentially to understand or make the decision about whether going into finance is something you want to do, whether you want to go buy side and sell side, and if you go buy side, what sort of skill sets and what sort of education and experience will make you a highly attractive hire and thus help you clinch that job. All right, without further ado, let's get into it. You! You're in McLean, are you? McLean, Virginia?
Great Falls.
Great Falls, right.
At the parent spot. So
Is this your first time living at home with the parents in a while?
So I'm with parents. It's the first time being back at home in a while. Generally, it's pretty good. Like being like an older, like a 30-year-old at home is kind of awesome. Like, because you don't fight about the old bullshit. Like, They don't care. There's no like financial relationship at this point.
Mate, you're preaching to the choir. I lived with my parents for 4 months. At the last 4 months of last year, it was bellissimo.
It's incredible. They have like a stocked fridge. They're like making dinner and shit. Like the logistics are incredible.
Yeah, I know. You don't need to sell me.
All right, ready to rock, my friend.
All right, sweet. So to start this off, tell us a little bit about your background in terms of, like, in a minute, where you're from, your name, how old you are, and what you do for a job right now.
Sure. My name's Guy Van Sickle. I work at Hannon Armstrong, which is a investment fund that funds solar projects and wind projects and energy efficiency projects. Basically, we give people money so they can build sustainable infrastructure. In terms of my background, I grew up in a little outside Washington, D.C. in Northern Virginia, and was fortunate to get into the space pretty early on. 30 years old now. Have been working in finance and sustainable infrastructure since graduating college.
Right. Where did you go to college?
Johns Hopkins.
Right. So to put this in perspective, if you had to try and put the finance jobs that you can get out of college into, say, like 3 or 4 buckets, what are the 3 or 4 buckets, and which of those buckets is your bucket?
Sure. So I would say often the most traditional route, a tough route though, is to go into investment banking, which would be working at some place like Bank of America, Citibank, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, kind of the marquee name, where you go into an analyst program for 2 years and you work on your financial modeling skills and learn how to create, PowerPoints, and frankly do a fair amount of busy work, but busy work that can open a lot of doors for you down the line.
What do you mean busy work?
Well, you're going to be asked to, change the font size on page 6 of the pitch deck for a investor. So you may
Oh,
be
that sounds
trying
like
to
a problem.
launch, a bond offering for Coca-Cola or something like that, and you need to make sure all the formatting in there is completely dialed in. And that's what you do, kind of the early stages of that type of finance route, is supporting the bank's larger initiatives to raise capital for companies. So that's one avenue. I definitely went a different avenue where I started up with a smaller shop, and I've actually been at my firm since graduation. That firm's Hannon Armstrong, and started the analyst route. But in the smaller firms, you tend to get a little bit more hands-on in terms of the transaction negotiation and digging into the fundamentals of the project or the opportunity, just because there's fewer people to do that type of thing. So I would say in terms of the balance of opportunities in the finance space, you can go with a larger, what are called the bulge bracket banks, where they'll have a more intensive training program around Excel, PowerPoint, financial markets, that type of thing. Or you can go the smaller route and get a little bit more hands-on experience, and sort of a bit more training on the fly.
Right. Are you on the is the main difference the size of the firm and thus how much responsibility you're given early on? Or you're a fund investing in solar projects, etc., for example. Is the end state of what the firm actually does different between these two buckets?
So there's a term called buy side and sell side as it relates
Yep.
to finance. Sell side are those that are trying to sell opportunities to potential investors. So if you are a investment banker at Bank of America, you are going to represent a company, we'll use the Coca-Cola example, and try and sell Coca-Cola's bonds to a series of investors. And those investors may be insurance companies or BlackRock or kind of big institutional investors. And that's what's called the sell side, being on an investment banker. You're trying to sell, assets. And then there's the buy side, which is those that have the large stacks of money that are then looking to pick through these opportunities and find good ones. My firm sits on the buy side, which is we are buying opportunities and investing in projects as opposed to, we do a little bit of both, and there's often a blend between how some firms function. But oftentimes you kind of start on. It's a little easier to get into the sell side of kind of the financial industry than the buy side, just because on the buy side they're looking for people with more in-depth kind of credit experience and understanding the complexities of all these deals.
Yeah, right. So that kind of makes sense. I mean, on the sell side, it's a numbers game, right? Like you just fucking pick up the phone and you keep selling until you get someone to bite. And then as soon as you get someone to bite, you hand the opportunity off to someone who actually knows what they're talking about, right? Where on the buy side, you're spending someone's money and they want to know, and they care about their money. So they want to know where that money's going.
Exactly.
And if you spend it in the wrong place, heads will roll.
Correct.
To put it,
yep. That is dialed in. Yep.
Yeah.
It's a little different when it's your own money. Yep.
Yeah. So if you're going into so you went into the buy side, how hard is it for someone straight out of college to get into the buy side?
I think
to get into the buy side, I would assume to get into the buy side would be to like value in the buy side is experience and understanding how to spend money wisely. The junior positions therefore must be the same shit kicker roles where you have no authority to touch anyone's money, but you're there to provide the supporting grease around the axles to help the people who are touching people's money to be more efficient and get more work done at scale, I assume.
Exactly. Yep. Nope. That's completely right. So you're still doing the grunt work and working through, making sure everything in the Excel model ties out to the contract documents and making sure all the presentations are pretty and um, the but yeah, you're basically supporting in that role of those that are on the investment committee deciding what to invest in. But I would say it is a bit tougher on the buy side. What I think is interesting on the buy side is that in some cases your experience in particular sectors as opposed to just like having a finance degree or finance background can differentiate you. And to dig into that further, so I studied global environmental sustainability and business. So the reason I was, better positioned for my firm was that I had, knowledge of how energy markets work and how, sustainability, accounting and issues around that, as opposed to having kind of your standard finance degree. And I think something similar can be said is if you want to go into, healthcare, private equity, like having some healthcare experience, or if you wanted to go into, kind of sports private equity, having experience in that realm, where you're offering, a perspective that the investment team may value in a different way than just kind of like financial knowledge.
Yeah, right. So is it fair to say that um, on the sell side, the objective is making money? On the buy side, while the objective and the business model is provide a good return to your investors, the people who are more interested in being involved in the buy side are also usually quite passionate about the sector they work in, because the objective isn't make money right now. The objective is use money to achieve an effect that you care in the world.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a in terms of the term over which you're looking at making money, right? Sell side is much more immediate. It's immediate fees. It's immediate. We placed this bond with an investment firm, and we earned a 1% fee on that, and that's all distributed to our team. On the buy
Yeah.
side, it's more prolonged return metrics. It's how did our fund do versus the S&P 500, or some metric in the
Yeah.
marketplace, and then you get paid around that. I think in the long term, the if we're talking just dollars, buy side typically makes more money than the sell side. It's like a little bit more relaxed. Like if you hear like hedge fund managers and private equity folks, like that's all buy side. But I would say in terms of being able to commit to a sector and something you're particularly interested in, working on the buy side, you may be able to design your fund in a way or work or pick funds that have particular focuses, right? Like a private equity fund may be particularly interested in impact investing, or it may be particularly focused on sports management and looking at how to play in that marketplace. So they tend to be more focused, but then again, you'll have really large ones, somebody like BlackRock that basically does everything. That can be an entry point too on the buy side, is entering into those type of firms that have that training infrastructure a little bit larger.
Yeah, before we go into more detail about how to get the jobs, etc., this is interesting. I find finance fascinating, so I spend a lot of time reading about it myself, just because I find it's a black box that I want to understand how it works. But if the buy side, right, you're actually working, you actually have the resources and the money to play with. You actually work with a more diverse group of people from more diverse backgrounds so that you can get that subject matter expertise into your firm to conduct a knowledgeable assessment of an investment. You have less stress because your return margins might be 10 years. The fund needs to give a return over 10 years as opposed to giving a return every quarter or every year. And you make more money. Why the hell would anyone want to go sell side?
It's harder to get that job.
Okay.
It's hard to get. I mean, it's you gotta put in your time, busting your ass to find those opportunities. What I'll say too, the buy side isn't a walk in the park. If you don't hit your return metrics for the people that gave you money, they're not going to give you money anymore, and you're out of business, right? So,
But
you've got
that's if you run the fund. How
yeah.
stressful are your key performance indicators, like your regular targets that you have to hit as a junior employee at a buy side fund?
I would say
Like,
there's
what is a regular
slightly.
KPI? What is a KPI someone in their first 5 years at a buy side fund as a junior person? What's the sort of KPI they would have?
I would say it's probably the assessment on like the timeliness of them delivering materials, their accuracy, their interpersonal skills with clients. It's going to be a lot of like qualitative stuff typically in the first couple
Yeah.
of years because your manager is basically going to be assessing like how did you do on the calls with clients, how did you do in terms of just like putting together a model that doesn't break, and like not having errors in your deliverables and things like that. And then also like, are you providing like insightful contributions and kind of adding where you can on it, whether you're writing
Yeah.
like a summary of investment or whatever
So all the good KPIs.
it is.
You're only putting ticks in the pro column at the moment for me. I mean, the shit KPIs, and for if you're a young kid listening to this, a shit KPI is like hit $20 million worth of sales in the next 3 months. And if you don't hit your $20 million worth of sales, you're fired because
Right.
that stresses the fuck out of you because
Yeah.
you're like, I'm just going to hit that many sales. But if your KPIs are, do you do good research? Do you provide me with key insights? Are you good with clients? Did you actually read this document correctly and make it right? Like, that's all pretty much stuff that is completely within your control to pass or fail. You're not
Mhm.
subject to the other person purchases what you're selling, which is
Right.
what causes the stress, right? You're not in control of your success. So on the
Right.
buy side, even at the junior entry level positions, it's a less stressful environment by the sounds of things.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't want to make it too rosy. Like, I fortunately didn't have to do too much of that, like suffer too much of that, just because we were a smaller shop. But um, you know, working for a private equity firm that's on the buy side, they really beat the shit out of you too. You know, you're gonna be working super long hours, and you're gonna be asked to kind of overstretch yourself. But they're compensating you for that, and hopefully you find a good one, you're getting trained well and mentored well. And, it's kind of an apprenticeship process. I've found is that you've got these folks that have been in there a while and have seen hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of different investment opportunities and can assess, what makes it good or bad, or key risks or key things to think about very quickly. And it's like trying to keep up with the pace at which their brain works and what they're thinking about. So it's an interesting apprentice process.
Right. I do want to ask about hiring, but just very quickly, at a let's say a small to mid size buy side fund, like
Yep.
one you went into, maybe one a little bit bigger. If you're coming out of university or sorry, college here in America and you're 22, 23 years of age and you get an entry level position, how much can you how much would an entry level position make? And then between the age of 23 and say 30, how much does that increase?
Sure. So you're probably looking at about, let's see, about 80K starting salary, and then that's going to step up pretty materially over the next couple years. So, you're probably looking at like a 20K raise over your first, like each year over your first 3 or 4. And then once you get to, typically you do 2 years as an analyst, 2 or 3 years as an analyst, and then you transition into an associate. And once you hit associate, you're making 150 to 200.
Yep.
And then, from there, you'll get promoted to vice president and, then maybe director down the line. Typically around the time you're, late 20s, 30, you're probably looking at, mid 200s to 300.
Wow. Right. And is the sell side, this, I suppose the thing about the sell side of coming
And
back to
that's
this,
and
like,
that's to clarify. That's going to be, Sam, to clarify. That's all in. So that's going to be like some variable bonus component. So like
right.
based on hitting metrics. That's
Sure.
top side.
So it's not just
Your
base
resource
salary.
there, like pay scale, and a couple of the other ones. Wall Street Prep. If you just Google around for that, I mean, the thing is, all the Wall Street people are so obsessed with their how much money they make
Yeah.
that it's on the internet. One thing I've learned, and I would love to spread to the people. One thing I'd love to spread to the people is they've very efficiently priced, and so they know
You just cut out for a bit there. They've very efficiently priced what?
they very efficiently priced the human soul. So it's
Right.
like, so they know, they've done all their analysis. They're very good at analysis on figuring out what's your breaking point for how much money you'll get paid. And again, I haven't had this like, terrible of an experience, but at investment banks, you're going to work, potentially 18, 20 hours a day. They're going to bust your ass, and they've priced in like, how much are you willing to deal with at a certain price level? And it's the same thing with like lawyers and all that. They figure it out. They know how much they need to pay you for that.
Considering that sell side, right? When you're selling anything, there's always a pay structure of like commission, right?
Yeah.
And an investment bank, it might not be a commission per every trade, but it might be like, how much did you sell for the year? And therefore your bonus is a percentage of that sale.
Yeah.
Coming back to this buy side versus sales side, is it fair to say that if you are good at the sales side and you are a good salesman at a young age, especially in the first 15 years of your career, you can probably make more money on the sales side than the buy side. But in the long run, once you're 35, 40 plus and you're running your own fund or whatever, that's when the buy side really starts to make more money than the sales side. So you
Well described.
Yeah, you hit a glass ceiling in the sales side unless you go on to be like, the CEO of JP Morgan Chase and get $100 million a year thing.
Right.
Even that is probably substantially less than Steve Cohen running SAC Capital and earning billions.
Right. And I will say the marginal change in your life based on like making much more than like, let's say it's 150 or 200K. I think it's what's your quality of life? It's like, can you hang out with your friends? When was the last time you saw your family? Like, does your girlfriend or significant other like hate you because all you talk about at work and you always have to leave dinners all the time? So it's like there's a balance, right? And I think what I would encourage folks is think about what you're actually doing and what you're spending your time on and what types of projects you're working on, and like, does that challenge you, stimulate you like intellectually? Do you feel good about the work? Are you fired up about it? Because that'll carry you like way longer than anything else. That'll actually like make you be way better at your job too.
Absolutely. And like I mean, to give this perspective, I mean, I personally have spent the last 4 years doing sales, and I'm decent at it. I'm not great at it. I'm decent at it because I enjoy the game of trying to find out, how do I get into this organization? How do I get in front of that person? When I get in front of them, how do I say the right thing that ingratiates myself with them? so that they get to the next meeting. But I am completely not at all motivated by money, which
Right.
makes me a terrible salesman in the sense of when I switch off, I switch off. When I'm
Yeah.
bored, I switch off. Like,
Yeah.
whereas the sell side of finance, by the sounds of things, is if you are the type of person who just is motivated by money and loves the hustle, and you get great fulfillment out of getting a sale and earning a commission and knowing that that commission means that you can move into a bigger apartment and get a better car and go to the Hamptons for the summer and throw an awesome party with hot chicks or hot guys, like, then the sell side might be amazing and it might be
Right.
perfect for your personality. But if you're interested in finance because you find finance from a theoretical capability standpoint really interesting, but it's only interesting because you find it interesting, not because you actually want the money, then the buy side, where you have to combine that intellect and concept with, understanding different markets. And by markets, we mean like understanding the solar cell market. How is the solar industry rising compared to the petroleum industry? How is what's happening in the Middle East and Russia with their oil wars? How is that going to affect the increase or decrease of sales of solar companies, etc.? If you think of finance, if you enjoy finance from the perspective of enabling and investigating those other parts of the world more further, it sounds like the buy side is definitely the place to be.
Yeah, no, I think that's spot on. And one of the things that attracted me was what you mentioned right there as an enabler. And so, I am fortunate enough that the mission of our fund is to exclusively invest in projects that address climate change, both through reducing carbon emissions and making infrastructure more resilient to the effects of climate change. And, we take the approach that the reason we're investing in this stuff is because really that's the future of energy. And there's just such a massively growing market for these types of investment opportunities, that being on the front edge of that, of like this growing pool of investment opportunities, allows us to find preferred returns and do better for our shareholders.
Yeah.
So I think what's cool is I think of finance as a way of um, allocating capital to good ideas, and you can use it to enable good ideas, right? There's a whole push now around environmentally, social, and governance conscious investing, ESG. And the idea is by allocating your funds to particular opportunities that take those into account, you're actually going to reduce your long-term risk and earn better returns for your shareholders and those that are
Yeah.
investing in the fund. I find that super cool, right? Because like that's how you make change, right? You can go protest in front of the Maryland Supreme Courthouse about offshore wind, but what's going to move the money is if you get BlackRock to move $2 billion into those projects and like start getting that movement. So that's the kind of stuff I'm really interested in.
Yeah, and just to like hit home on that, I've known this through, well, two data points, right? One, my own experience building a company, raising money, working with our investors. And then that's one data point. And then the other data point is like your Instagram account, where I see you on site with the companies you've invested in and you're going and seeing it. You're getting involved with some of the installation of the solar panels, you're getting your hands on the tools. Between those two data points, like the key thing that's really interesting about this and the buy side, I suppose, is that at the end of the day, when you're spending money, like it's not like you're trading on a stock and you're just watching it go up or down and betting for and against. It's like, I'm spending money. Let's go check out and put our hands on what we're spending money on to make sure you're not lying to us. And this is all very legitimate. So you're going out to your client side to make sure that the company that you invested in, that might be a solar panel installer, is actually installing the panels and doing it well. When I, for our company, we had our investors, they come into our office regularly to make sure that the kids are playing together well? You know what I mean? Like, are you guys actually doing the job that you told us you were doing when we gave
Right.
you money? Like, and that hands-on experience, I suppose, that needing to verify your investment makes your life a lot more dynamic and a lot more interesting because you actually get to go out into the world and see the fruit of your labor, and your labor being, the analysis and the capital injection into a project.
Yeah, no, spot on, spot on. It's satisfying, it's you can have a tangible impact. And I'm just in one subsect of kind of the impact investing world, and the impact investing world. I think it's getting merged with just investing in aggregate. Like it does offer though this satisfaction of seeing, okay, cool, we just funded a $50 million project at a veterans hospital complex that improves the air quality within that complex, saves the government a ton of money, and we're reducing a bunch of carbon emissions and saving water in the process. But it's good business, right? It's not this philanthropic kind of chasing ideals. It's doing these things because they are impactful and they're the right way to do it, and ultimately investing along those lines, I think, is the most profitable in the long run maneuver.
Yeah, right. Have you ever been involved with like, so far we've talked about all the good stuff, right?
Yeah, right. Let's talk about this shit.
What's the bad side of the job? And and that could be everything. Let's talk through it, like, from the big picture. The big picture could be pulling money out of a project, like canceling an investment because they're not performing and you can't throw good money after bad, through to like the bad side of the job being like spreadsheets.
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, like, tough side is you see a project that's like, got an example in my head, a housing authority energy efficiency upgrade. Like, the story is great. The contractor, I really like them. Like, the engineering firm is great. It's going to have a good impact, but they just have a terrible balance sheet and financial statements. Like, we just can't fund this project based on the prospects of them repaying. So I've got to then put on my, like, only care about money, douchey financier hat and be like, sorry, we can't do this project. And so that side of it, is less attractive.
And do you have those conversations face to face, or they usually done over the phone or email?
Typically over the phone. And I mean, the big thing too is communicating that up front. So just being very transparent about what we can and can't do as early in the process as possible. But we've gotten to a point on deals where we may have been working on something for 3-6 months, and I gotta deliver the news and be like, look, we can't do this where we are right now. We don't have the financial statements we need. Like, your client isn't as creditworthy as they may have represented, and that sucks. To have that, be working on that, and then it just blow up, and not to get to pursue that stuff. And then you're always under the pressure to find the next good deal and make sure that that's always coming in. And it's exciting, but you've got to hit your targets and make sure you're performing. And it can get scary in times like the COVID financial downturn, where you're like, oh shit, what's going to happen if people stop borrowing money and the economy shuts down. So we're very well positioned in that, but it's people funds go out of business all the time, and people stop giving you money, and you got to make sure you're good to your clients so they want to keep coming back to you. So that's kind of the macro stuff.
Yeah. When you say find the next project, what do you mean?
I mean, because you're always competing with other people that are investing in the space. So, our model is we try and find top tier engineering firms that need money to build their projects. So people like that are like Siemens, Johnson Controls, Honeywell, EDF, kind of the big people in the energy infrastructure space. Schneider Electric. I'm leaving some people off. Somebody's gonna get mad at me at some point. But the idea is that we got to keep going out to find new customers that are interested in our capital. And there's always going to be competitors that are going to come in and try and offer, cheaper rates and, invest in the same type of thing that we're invested in. So one example is loans on solar projects. So if you've got a big, solar project out in the desert, maybe 7 years ago, that's a project that our fund would be like, great, cool, we will give you a loan to build that project. Nowadays, there's so many people that are now comfortable with solar projects that you have massive, big, boring banks that are rushing in to fund those at rates that we would no longer be interested in. And so it's like constantly kind of innovating and finding where is your place to play in the financial landscape.
And I mean, without going into a detailed analysis, so we don't bore people, but how do you find those projects? Are there databases, or is it literally just like Google?
Oh, yeah. So I would say it's relationships with people that are doing the work. Relationships with people that are not financial engineers, they're actual engineers, right? They actually, build things, do things, design things, provide much more value to society than myself sitting behind Excel, actually have tangible skills. And finding those folks and figuring out how we can structure something that best supports what they're trying to do. So,
yeah, right. So the two really interesting things that I find that's one like Hinoma that you just talked about is one is like the thing that I've probably come to realize much later in life than I should have, probably much later than you did since you've been in this industry for 10 years. But when you're starting a business, so as we went through the process of trying to start a business, you think of money as like these gatekeepers who are super stingy and don't want to give it to you, and you need to go and sing for your supper. You need to plead for them to give you money. And if you're very, very lucky, they might give you some, right?
mm-hmm,
But then once you've gone through the process and you understand how the whole financial ecosystem works, and you realize how much money is out there to be invested, you realize that it's the opposite, which is that all these companies are like, we have so much fucking money and we have to put it somewhere.
yeah,
And we're competing with all the other people trying to put their money somewhere for the good, safe investment. And if so,
yeah.
if a word gets out that there's a good, safe investment, like the power flips to the people raising money, and it's
Right.
not that power doesn't sit with the people giving the money.
Totally.
It's
Totally
fascinating.
Yeah, the creators that are starting companies, they're way more unique than like a sack of dollar bills,
Yeah.
A sack of dollar bills is a sack of dollar bills.
Yeah.
So that's why
So
that's why we're all about relationship and trying to make it as easy for our clients as possible. So somebody like Johnson Controls, we've been working with them for 20 years, and getting that kind of just streamlined approach to be as efficient as possible. So that's all the rosy stuff. We can start digging into the wonky, lame stuff I call that. Because that's important, right? Like, what do I do on an average Tuesday at 3 p.m.?
Yeah,
right?
and I definitely want to get to that. There's one more thing on the big picture. You said relationships, right? So how much of your business or how much of your time is spent proactively figuring out how do I get in front of and develop better relationships with engineers, etc.?
Right. Yeah, I would say since I'm more junior, I would say probably about 20% of my time is thinking about how can I find the next person that's the next company that's going to be the front of line of electric vehicle charging stations or advanced water treatment plants or who are those people in the landscape? How do I get to them and talk to them and figure out what they need? I'd say that's
Yeah.
about 1%. But like if you talk to like our, we've got our executive vice president on the investment team whose whole job is to run around and try and find people like that.
Right.
And our CEO has kind of a balance between trying to, encourage people to invest in our company. So,
Yeah.
getting money. And then also building those relationships with like, the CEO of NG or the CEO of Schneider Electric and like, kind of schmoozing them there. And then also strategy. So I would say, we've got kind of the dedicated senior managers that like work on that, developing business. When you're more junior, it's like you're applauded for finding that kind of thing. So that would be kind of like my brownie points, right? If I could
Right.
bring in more of that. At this role in this kind of space, at where I am in life, it's managing the relationships that we have and making sure they have everything they need, and then using that to continue to build more through reputation.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean that's an important part because, you know, if you like, for example, right, if you're trying to figure out what you want to do for a career, and you think, oh yeah, finance is something I can do analysis, I can sit in the dark room and do analysis and figure things out. That actually suits my personality well. And then someone says to you, oh yeah, but there's the part of finance that no one really talks about, which is you're in sales. And that sale might be, let us invest in you. That sale might be, I need to sell myself to this person so that they like me, so that I can develop a relationship, so that over between now and 5 years from now, they might come to me 2 or 3 times with an investment opportunity.
Yep.
Like, you are in the people business of making,
Sure.
because ultimately what it comes down to, right, is there's like 2 buckets of this job. Make people like you so that they trust you and will do business with you, and then do the analysis to make sure you don't invest in something stupid.
Yes.
I
100%.
mean, that's what it comes down to, right?
That's,
So
that's pretty dialed in. Yeah, no, I would say like, and then there's the super wonky side of finance. Like if you're like a financial trader, like a quant person, you may just be writing algorithms all day, and your algorithm may just be trading the stock price, may just be trading oil futures, and you're literally a computer coder.
yeah,
But that's like a whole different world.
yeah,
That's more akin to like you should have a advanced computer science degree in artificial intelligence and write algorithms and try and beat
yeah,
the market. But like that stuff, I that's a pretty saturated market, and it's you gotta be quite the impressive individual to get into it. I think finance is an interest, like the realm of finance that we've been talking about is an interesting balance between having good numbers sense, being able to read through a legal contract, and then also having those relationship skills. Where you're totally right.
yeah,
It's like, does that client want to hang out with you and deal with you and talk on a phone late at night through their closing contract? Right? Are you
yeah,
going to be a person? Are they going to be like, ah, fuck that guy, I don't want to hang out with him?
yeah, yeah, exactly. So, all right. So now we've looked at the bigger picture. Let's go a little bit more narrow. So, what does the average day, week, month, year look like for you in your first 10 years? Let's say between 23 and 33.
Okay, got it. All right, so we'll start with that Tuesday at 3 p.m. again. So typically what I'm doing is I've got, let's say, maybe 5 to 10 different projects I'm working on. And those projects will be a variety of, let's say, a $20 million energy efficiency project at a school district, solar project at a series of different commercial locations, basically a variety, a mix of different projects with different clients to work on. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be getting engineering reports and summaries of the projects from our clients. I am going to be looking at, if we take an example of, we'll go back to the hospital example again. I'm going to look at, all right, who's my client, who's building it? What is their credit profile? What's the likelihood that they can build this thing, get it done, and hit kind of the timeline deliverables? What's my risk in that? And when I'm doing that, I'm running over to the Bloomberg. I'm looking at their credit rating. I'm reading their credit reports from Moody's and S&P. I'm looking at where do their bonds trade right now in terms of the marketplace. And then I'm looking, similar analysis on, all right, if they build this thing, what's the credit of the hospital? What's their financial standing? How are they looking? And then I'm going to look through the engineering document. I'm going to say, all right, what are they actually installing, right? Are they putting in a bunch of light bulbs and insulation, which is pretty boring and pretty difficult to screw up? Or are they trying to put in like an advanced battery storage system that has to have some algorithm that like times when it turns on and off to try and save more money? And I'm thinking about that risk and the capability of that client to do that. So that takes the form of using Bloomberg, thinking about what are the market comps for it, and then I'm going to take the numbers out of their project and I'm going to build a financial model around that to say, all right, if we invest $20 million in this project, we should charge them an interest rate of X. We should assume this much for operating the project. We should make sure that the cash flow generated by the project is 120% of the loan that we're going to pay, that they're going to owe us. So it's a balance of kind of reading the engineering document, running over, looking at where market comps are, playing around in Excel, and then kind of looking at the legal provisions in the contract that they have.
When you say build a financial model, it's a term
Yeah.
that is thrown around a lot.
Yeah.
Does that simply mean like, well, how long are they saying it's going to take to build this? How much is it going to cost? And then what do we think their operating costs are going to be? And then in the context of all their other operating costs, so how long is it going to take them to build a profit they can pay us back? Is that?
Yeah, basically. Yeah, so you're gonna build, you're just Excel monkeying around and you're gonna make it all look pretty and like flow together cleanly. But yeah, at the end of the day is we're gonna give them, $20 million. How much should we charge them? And how do we make sure we get paid back? And you build that all into the model and you just, you make sure that all it kind of adds up and the numbers work. So on the like modeling side of things, it's more of like a repetition and knowing how to do it the right way. It's not that hard. You're not doing like crazy advanced computer programming. If people want like and are interested in the clean energy space and financing, there's a great website called Pivotal 180 that does like, hardcore Excel modeling, video classes, that type of thing. But there are a ton of resources out there for that. But that's if you are looking to enter the world, being conversant in the language of Excel is a differentiating skill set.
Right. So it sounds like, granted, this is once you get to a level of seniority within the company, within the firm that, you're trusted to do this. But once your training wheels are off and you're up and running, and you've got a little bit of a responsibility, and with that responsibility becomes you live by the sword, you die by the sword.
Mm-hmm.
But once you get to that point, you are essentially, it's almost like being an investigative journalist who can also crunch the numbers. What you're basically saying to me is like, someone's telling me a story. They're telling me this is what we're doing. This is how it's going to work. And then you're like, okay, I believe you. I want to believe you. But now I'm going to go away and I'm going to do my own investigation to contextualize what you told me, make sure what you're telling me makes sense compared to what I find. And then if it does, now I'm going to build a financial model within the risk limitations to find out, I reckon this is a 90% chance of success. And to make up for that 10% risk, we should charge a little bit extra for whatever reason.
Spot on, man. You're good at that. Good at the old summarization. But no, that's what it is. It's
So
digging
that's
in.
a very different job to what most people think finance is. You realize that? That's a very different job to what most people think finance is. Like,
right.
That is most people think of finance as like Wall Street fucking shares, trading shit, data analysis. Now, granted, that has a place
Yeah, yeah,
on parts of the market, but your side is more like you have to be someone who really enjoys going down the rabbit hole and understanding something and contextualizing and learning about it. And if you enjoy learning about the world, the financial modeling at the back end, that's just the after effect. Like that's the product you create at the end, but that's only like 20% of the equation of what you actually do. And the
yeah.
rest of it is just really interesting learning about the world stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thinking about all the different risk factors that can impact a project, a company, and it's pretty fascinating. And you get to meet a lot of very interesting folk. Um, I would say, on the uh, on the financing and like the Excel side of things, that's just like an expected thing you know how to do. And again, it's not that hard. And the other thing, you're totally right. People's perception of finance as this like super complicated thing, that's a reflection of like the fat old white dudes that came up with a bunch of complicated terms to keep people out. It's the same as sailing, right? Like it's the same bullshit, like, all of these, swaption and, hedging derivative, like all this bullshit it's just algebra at the end of the day in terms of the
Yeah.
math that actually goes into it. And then it's, how good are you at thinking about risk and thinking about opportunity and kind of thinking about things in both the broader context of where do we want to spend our time and who do we want to partner with, and like getting super detailed and making sure, literally the cents on a payment schedule tie out to your model and your contract so that people don't come back in a year and a half and say, this doesn't match, fuck you, we're not paying you, like that type of thing.
To the cent.
To the cent, man. This morning I was literally checking cents against a contract in my model, so that
Yay.
would be the less cool side. It was a cool project. It's a great project. Really cool energy efficiency project. Combined heat and power, some solar, some storage. But yeah,
Right.
fucking looking at dollars and cents in a PDF.
Cool. All right. That's interesting. So the next thing I want to ask you is, have you been involved yourself in hiring junior people, or you've been in a hiring meeting as a second set of eyes?
Yep, definitely.
Okay. So if you're the person hiring for a fund on the buy side at the junior
Mhm.
level, and in this context, you're in the context of sustainable energy,
Yep.
what are you actually looking for?
Sure. I'm looking for transactional experience. So, what deals have you worked on? What have you closed? And that would be like if you're like 2 or 3 years into your career. Like, have you worked on a solar project? Have you worked on energy efficiency? How many Excel models have you built? What's your experience like reviewing contracts and that type of thing? That would be like if you're a couple years in. If you're entry level, frankly, I think one of the things that I am most um, interested in is your passion for the space. Like, are you really interested in sustainable investing and sustainable infrastructure and what goes into that? Because there are a lot of people that have the skill sets, and you can teach the skill sets around Excel modeling and reviewing all this shit. It's, are you smart? The biggest one, do you ask good questions? Because
Yeah.
that's our whole job, is asking good questions. And frankly, that's like the gentleman that hired me. He tells the same lame story about like hiring me, but he finishes with, he's like, oh yeah, and Guy just like asked the best questions in the class, and like that's why we hire people, frankly, because it's how do you think about the intricacies of stuff. So it's really not even having a finance degree. I think there are things that can help you, like having Excel experience. So like knowing the various functions and things like that. And that's an easy one to do. There are a ton of online resources to just get, serviceable at that. But as it relates to me, it's, are you passionate about what we're doing? Do you understand why we're doing it? Because that's going to keep you there late at night
Yeah.
when you're tired and you're like, fuck this, I want to go to the bar. You're going to spend the extra 30 minutes to make sure you do it right.
Yeah.
And I look for, what other times have worked in challenging, stressful settings and just like did it the right way because you had to do it the right way. Whether that's where you went to school, military background, sports team, competitive other platforms, high achieving in other regards. It's like, when did you just suck it up when no one was watching your shit,
Yeah, right. Right. So, I find that interesting, right? Because it trickles down to what kids decide to study at university or college.
Mhm.
It never ceases to amaze me how many people, myself included, my first time around at university, study the wrong stuff. Like
Oh yeah.
like
Yeah.
what you choose to study is not aligned to what you want to do in any capacity or with
Right.
any sense of strategy. So if I wanted to say, for example, I was like, I really want to do finance. I know I want to do finance, and we'll come into this in a second about like the impact it has on like your quality of life, etc. But
Mhm.
say, for example, you're the type of person who's like, I want to do finance. I want the almost guaranteed stability and security of a good paycheck from a young age that allows
Mhm.
me to buy the house I want with the car I
Yeah.
want, all that crap.
Yeah.
But I don't want to compete against every single other person tooth and nail for the summer internship on Wall Street,
Right. Right.
and then
Right.
that turns into a job. If you want to go into a fund on the buy side, like it sounds like you are way better off like going, what do I actually want to, what finance sector I want to work in? Green energy. Okay, I'm going to do a degree in environmental engineering and sustainable
Yeah.
environmental engineering, whatever. And then on my time off, I'm just going to do some financial modeling training
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah.
And that's the sort of person who walks into a room with you and you're like, this person already understands the industry, they understand the science, they understand the
Yeah.
engineering, they're passionate, they're dedicated, and they have already taken it upon themselves to like expedite how quickly they're going to learn to do financial
Yeah.
modeling.
Totally.
Perfect.
Absolutely. And I think that goes with a whole host of things, right? If you want to get
Yeah.
in healthcare investing, don't study finance, study public health, right? Like
Yeah.
that's the kind of thing. And I am actually so grateful, looking back on it. Hopkins didn't offer a finance degree, and I was like, yeah, this is bullshit. Like, I don't want to get in finance. But I'm so glad they didn't. And the reason they didn't is because they wanted people to look at like, or a business degree. They wanted you to specialize in a thing and
Yeah.
then go take your expertise out into the world.
Yeah.
And
I've had that experience a lot lately where you're like, oh, the adults actually did know what they were talking about.
yeah, right. I was like, fuck this, and they're like, oh, right, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, right. Okay. So, all right, cool. That's good to know. So, all right, so we've talked about the job, what you need to know, how to get the job, etc. The other thing I want to talk about is the impact the job has on your social life. So,
Mhm.
like with the job, how much time off do you, and let's talk about your area specifically. If you have friends from the other finance areas and you can talk to that as well,
Yeah, yeah,
fantastic.
yeah.
How much time off are you getting? What impact does it have on your social life and dating life,
Sure.
etc.? Like, what is the impact? So, because like there are a lot of jobs out there where you're like, oh, I want to be a lawyer, and then like 6 months into your graduate law job, you're like, my life sucks, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
not
yeah,
going to
yeah.
get. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right, 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 right. Yeah, so I would say finance deservedly has that reputation. Your hours are long. Mine aren't as long because I am, at the no longer really kind of I'm sort of the mid-level ish.
Yeah,
But you're gonna be on call to do stuff on weekends and at evenings, and that needs to happen. And if that means you have to skip a date or a friends thing, that's gonna happen. I mean, you're gonna have like your 2 weeks off, 2 to 4 weeks off vacation time. But you're going to be working long hours during the week. You're probably looking at maybe 8:30 to 7-ish in terms of hours, which isn't crazy. But again, that's I guess where I am right now in my career. But yeah, if you're working on Wall Street, you're probably going to be working in banking, like high-end banking. You'll be working midnight, pulling all-nighters, working all weekend, not sleeping. But you're going to get paid more for that. Frankly, I would much rather be able to hang out with my friends and not work on the weekend. I don't really see the incremental value in that cash if you can't use it on fun things and are stressed out all the time. But yeah, I would say it depends. Yep.
The key thing, the other thing too, is, I mean, the majority of jobs these days, it doesn't really matter who you are and what really job you have. Like, most people have 2 to 4 weeks of leave, right?
Yeah.
It's basically how it works. And
America, baby.
and it's very, very rare that your 2 to 4 weeks of leave align with your friend's 2 to 4 weeks of leave.
Right. Yeah.
So your 2 to 4 weeks of leave are when it suits you, not when it suits your friends. So those days of all your friends having time off at the same time, they're gone.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And
you've got this
sidebar, enjoy solo trips. They're awesome. I encourage everybody to take one solo trip a year. You figure out exactly what you want to do, and then you do it. They're awesome. But you get good friend trips in, good weekend trips in.
Yeah. Well, this is the point, right? The thing about finance, and this is, besides many of the pros, but one of the big pros is that from a young age, you have the same amount of time off as other people when you have time off. Your 9 to 5, Monday to Friday might be a bit more intense, but your weekends and your holidays are the same as everybody else. But when you have that time off, you have the money to do it properly and really enjoy it.
Right. Now, I would caveat that your weekends may be sucked up by some big deals. So like you are going to be working more, but you're right. You're in terms of like your pure time off, like your vacation time, you're getting the same and you have more flexibility. I think it's akin to being like, just being on call. You may get a weird modeled thing that you have to fix at 10:30 at night. Right. I was doing that on like maybe a Monday or Tuesday. Some client sends them over at like probably 8:45, and I was just like, you know what, I can wait to do this tomorrow, but they need it early in the morning. I'm just going to crank it out. So that type of thing.
How does it? And if you feel uncomfortable talking about this, you can say so. But how does it affect your dating life?
I would say not too much. I think it works pretty well. I think I would say I have the ability to take time when I need it and like can make plans and generally stick to those plans. I'm often late to stuff, but that's probably just because I'm late to stuff on my own. But it's always like packing a few too many things in the day. Be like, oh, can we push to like? I know we were supposed to do like 6:15. Can we do like 7:30? Like that work? That type of stuff. But yeah.
And generally speaking across the board, do females have a positive or negative response to finding out that you work in finance?
I'd say so. I got a little bit of a differentiated one. I joke that I'm half douchey banker, half tree hugger, and that typically is well received. So I think I think fortunately I don't hang out with too many folks that are like overly obsessed with the money side of it. So I'm not sure if it translates one way or the other, but I don't know. It offers flexibility and being able to do cool stuff. And,
are there funds in most parts of the country? Like, can you pretty much choose where you want to live if you want to do this, or are you pretty limited in where you can choose to live and work?
That's a good point. I would say obviously your big hubs are New York, and then San Francisco. San Francisco will be more early stage investing, so like more venture capital, more private equity type things. And Chicago, Houston, Dallas, if you're looking like oil, natural gas, Miami, if you're doing sort of South American international markets, international banking. Toronto is a pretty big hub. Toronto, don't sleep on Toronto. Very cool city.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say. Oh, and then like I've got some buddies in Nashville. It's expanding. Nashville's like if they have a really big healthcare hub, so there'll be a bunch of firms that do that. Austin's got a few, so I'd say it's a mix, but similar to there are definitely hubs for it.
So in
But
terms
yeah,
of
metropolitan basically.
yeah, but in terms of the geographic dispersion of funds, are they dispersed more based on the level, the stage of investment you're in, or by the sort of markets you're investing in? Like DC, for example, New York City, Los Angeles, San Francisco, maybe a little bit of Denver, maybe a little bit of Salt Lake City. They would be your like cybersecurity investment firms, or Boston as well, right? Because that's where cybersecurity markets are. So you'll have funds in those locations, and would you have funds of all sizes? Like, is that how it kind of works?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say like the big funds will have offices in a couple different places. So like, BlackRock obviously has funds like all over the country. They may have their like specialty firm that does more early stage tech in San Fran, just because it means they can have more meetings more easily out there. More healthcare, bio research stuff, maybe based in Boston. I would say it's a pretty good mix. And frankly, some of these like rich fund managers may just decide they want to live in Vail, Colorado and have an office there. So it can be random sometimes. But yeah, I would say it matches up with the dispersion of, kind of larger metropolitan areas.
Yeah, right. All right, man. Well, that's been awesome. That's a huge help. I'll let you go. I've taken up an hour and 12 minutes of your time, but thanks for all that. I really appreciate it.
Great. No, it's a ton of fun. These are super cool and great questions. So
awesome, man. Well, I'll speak to you soon, and enjoy your quarantine and enjoy your time with the parents.
Yeah, bud. Have a great one.
You too, man. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, guys, really hope you enjoyed that podcast. I did. I learnt a lot. I don't know if you went on that learning journey with me. I was someone who really thought I understood this space. Turns out I didn't. But now I feel like I've really got a good grasp on it. It really, bridged the gap between where the books end and the reality of the job starts. Guy's obviously a great guy and really cares about his job, which is, providing the operating capital to invest in sustainable projects to help save the planet. And, it's quite clear that the lifestyle that comes and the money you can make early on in this space is great. So for the quick summary, there are two sides to the business when it comes to finance. There's buy side and sell side. On the buy side, you are basically investing people's money. That means you actually need to research projects, understand them, verify that what the person who's trying to get your money is saying is actually true. And then once you decide that it's a project you might want to invest in, you then need to build a financial model to figure out the terms of which you lend them the money. So how much money am I going to give you and how quickly do you need to pay back with what interest? But the key thing that's really interesting about this is that the buy side, you make more money in your career. You make a decent amount of money, up to about $300K USD within 10 years of starting the job out of college, which is far greater than most industries. But more importantly, the people that can get into the buy side of the equation are those that, come from non-finance backgrounds. So if you want to get into the buy side, the best way you can do it, especially if you are a budding young university student, it's not to do a finance degree. Instead, figure out what you want to invest in, such as, is it high tech such as cybersecurity? Is it investing in government contracts? Is it investing in projects that help the environment, etc.? And then figure out what you can study at university that's going to give you the knowledge you need, that's going to make you highly valuable to those funds. And then on the side, just take a few YouTube courses online and teach yourself how to build financial models. That's the easy part. You heard Guy say it. The hard part is finding the people with a contextual understanding of the industry and the sector to help assess a company's viability and value. The easy part is teaching you the financial modeling stuff. They can teach you that on the job. So you want to basically give yourself that contextual education. So what that means is don't study finance at university. Figure out what you want to invest in for a future and then study something that's going to give you that knowledge. If you want to go sell side, and I will do another podcast about the sell side is about strict finance. It's more quantitative. It's about making quick money off quick sales. So it hasn't got to do with doing detailed research into industries. It hasn't got to do with understanding things in detail. It's just about, is this thing going to go up or down in terms of its share price, and am I going to bet for or against it? Or am I just going to basically help facilitate sales and investments and then take a clip off the top? So the sort of person, by the sounds of things, that's going to really flourish in the sell side are people who are they're driven by money. Like the objective in the sell side is make money now, or over the course of a year, make the company you work for a shit ton of money and then get a percentage of that money as your commission. But that's mostly what drives these people. The thing that drives people on the buy side, by the sounds of things, is more like you like working with finance and you respect what the finance sector does for the world and what it enables, but you also care about the industry in which you are investing, the sector which you are investing, because it's that interest that's going to drive you to do that little bit of extra research and understand what you're doing and build a breadth of knowledge over time about a very specific thing so that you can make wise investments. So they're two different personalities. People who want to live the flashy life, make heaps of money, and be quite shallow in their pursuit, but money is the objective. Sell side sounds like the way to go. But if you care about the world and you care about a topic and you respect what finance can do for it, buy side is the way to go. The other key thing to take away from this is that it sounds like early on in your career, if you are good at it, the sell side is where you're going to make the majority of your money. But then you go up quick and then you plateau quite easily. The buy side starts slower, but if you want to make real money, like if you want to become a billionaire, such as like running your own fund or running your own hedge fund or running your own quantitative fund / high frequency trading fund, etc., the buy side is where the real money is at. So there is a world in which you can go sell side and then come across to buy side, especially if you were on a desk on the sell side that specialized in a certain market. That would make it valuable. But the real money long term is in the buy side. But if you only want to do finance for a short period of time and you want to earn some money quick and early, and you're a good salesman and you can sell things better than most people and you've got a good work ethic, then maybe the sell side is for you. But before you make that decision, I will do a sell side podcast where I'll find someone from that side of the tracks and I'll interview them. So we'll go there in that podcast. But anyway, I hope that was useful. 10 years from starting on the buy side in a fund, investing and researching something you really care about with a little bit of Excel skills to be able to do the financial modeling. Give up a few weekends, work some nights, but otherwise less stress, great pay, more interesting job, and long-term money is greater. It sounds like the buy side is where it's at. So if you're looking to change careers and you come from a specific background, maybe you could be very valuable to a buy side firm. You just need to find the right firm that needs your subject matter expertise to actually help them invest. Or if you're a university student or you're looking to go to university and you want to go buy side when you graduate university, figure out what you love and what you care about, and then find firms that do that. Once you validate that there are firms that invest and value that knowledge, then try to specialize in that at university. Do not do a finance degree. Find something that's going to teach you about that market, that sector, that part of the world, that engineering style, whatever it is. Learn that and then teach yourself some Excel modeling on the side and you will be good to go. All right, guys, that's enough from me, and I hope you enjoyed this pod. And as always, if you want to get more exclusive content from Grease Media, come across to our platform at greasemedia.com, where I have a whole bunch of information profiles, other podcasts, etc., that I don't put on these mainstream podcast platforms because it's just not the way I've decided to do it. So come to the platform, sign up, create an account, and you can even add your own podcast. So if you feel like I've missed something, you can add it there. All right, guys, till next time, catch you later. You!